Welcome everybody to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your host for the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. Oh yeah. Welcome back everybody to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I wanted to do a disclaimer before you actually listen to the full interview with Umi Hsu. Basically what I want to tell all of you is that I made a mistake in the beginning, and my mistake was misgendering Umi. And I was aware that Umi goes by they. I knew it because I've been following them for a while now on Instagram. However, it came out to misgender them automatically, and I wanted to leave that authentic mistake on the recording to prove to people, to show to people that we all make mistakes. And by our mistakes, by making mistakes, we learn. I learned so much after this interview on why Umi goes by they. And it just, oh man, I'm just so thankful that Umi is so flexible. And we even talked about it after the interview, if Umi wanted me to re-record or edit, or we discussed why I was going to leave it. I'm so very thankful for having this opportunity to grow. And I hope all of you enjoy listening to this incredible interview. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy. Welcome back, everybody. Pride 2021 LGBTQIA continues with the pride and the support and the love. And today I'm interviewing Umi Hsu. Thank you so much. They. Oh my goodness. And you're going to tell me why we go by they. Thank you so much. They are live from Alhambra, which is coincidentally probably about 5-10 miles from me, and that just means more love and more friendship. I love it. Welcome so much. Welcome to my show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So yeah, tell me how you identify. I knew how you identified. I just like looking at your name, and then that happened. I'm so sorry. It happens to me all the time too. So tell me how you identify and why.
I'm going to tell you all about it.
Oh, great.
So I identify as trans non-binary, and so that to me, I think because I used to always tell people that I'm non-binary, just somebody who does not identify as either male or female or masculine or feminine. There is kind of this word in Chinese language, which is the language that I use while I was growing up. I grew up in Taiwan and spoke Mandarin Chinese. And
Wow.
in the Chinese language world, there is this thing called 中性, which means right in the middle, referring to kind of a neutral gender identity. I think it's like an identity. It's more like a presentation and an identity.
How is that again? Tongchi?
中性,
Songxi.
中性, yeah. So I always felt that way. I always felt like I was right down the middle, and that didn't obviously have any English words that was a common parlance for a long time. Like people don't talk about being non-binary. So I was like kind of waiting for that term to come about, and I always felt like I was I couldn't to the point where I couldn't even say like words like boys and girls in school because I just didn't really feel like that was me, and it's just sort of this like internal struggle. And then I moved to Virginia with my family when I was 12, and that kind of put me in a whole different cultural sphere, a whole different kind of gender sphere as well. Like Virginia in the American South is very much into the gender binary.
I'll say, wow.
Yeah, it's wild over there.
That's
So
like hardcore culture shock. Whoa.
totally, yeah, and in Taipei, in Taiwan was I was living in the city, so like very cosmopolitan. We saw lots of different people. There was definitely like a gender diversity, at least in pop culture. There was like people who kind of sort of present themselves as 中性, and also in like I don't know, there was like traditional operas, where you have like female impersonators and male impersonators. It's just it's very common in the culture. And Virginia just was like the opposite. Everything was very restrictive, and gender and gender roles happened to be a part of that too.
Can
So
imagine.
so that was rough. And I think having kind of accessed the language of non-binary recently, as it became more adapted widely by the society, by governments, by by all the authoritative figures too, like authoritative institutions out there. And I think that felt like to me the closest thing to what I felt. Um, and the trans part really to me is a strong kind of way to stake a claim to want to be like progressive, to want to stake a claim to um, the conversations that are happening about transgender rights, and
Yeah.
to me is also part of my consciousness and identity. So trans non-binary.
Wow, the most beautiful thing about interviewing different trans men and different trans people, different trans identified people, are the different ways that we, I guess, how can I say, we tend to base a lot of it's culturally, I'm seeing, which is awesome. And it's like I wish the Latino community had some kind of middle gender. That would be great. But I really love the right in the middle. I just want to make sure I say it right. Shongxi, Zhongxi,
中性
Zhongxing,
性 yeah.
Xing. So that means like kind of somewhere in the middle. That I feel like that identifies me as well. Like, why doesn't the American language have such, not such a harsh sounding word? Because I know what you're saying. Like trans sounds like it's done that way and that's it. And there tends to be a little bit more negative connotation rather than something that could just be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I think interestingly, Zhongxing is the first character of Zhongxing actually is the same character as Zhongguo, like China and Chinese.
Uh
And so it's
huh.
like right down the middle. That idea of being in the middle is actually highly valued in Chinese culture.
Wow.
And so I'm sure that people who present this way, who feel this way, also get stigmatized. I've felt that like a little bit as a kid growing up. There's always space for that because you do see people who are like more in the middle, in the way that they present themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is not to say that transgender rights manifest the same way. Like in Taiwan, I think it's like I think getting medical access is still a problem, and like they're just now discussing like health care, and I think like the non-binary gender marker, we
Mm-hmm.
are like getting used to it here, and it's starting to be very common here in paperwork, and not so over there. It's just emergent. But I do always feel like there's more space to be in the middle.
Yeah, and I think that for like I would say probably like a 70-80% of the population.
Yeah, I don't know how people feel, and I never talked about it. I was just knew, okay, when a pop star says that they're 中性, they how they present, I was like, okay, that's me. Like I'm like that. So and you do see that a lot in kind of music and art, where there's more people who are right in the middle who present that way. And it's even in the language, I know, like the characters, speaking of pronouns, right? That them, theirs are my pronouns, and that's sort of a singular, third person thing, which is hard to come by in like a lot of people who are so like brought up grammatically correct. They can't like
Right.
use that, right? So but I think the history of pronouns in Taiwan is so interesting. I just found out that there was only a universal pronoun for everybody.
Man,
It's a
that's amazing. That's the way it should be.
Oh, no, get this, get this. It was neutral for a long time until the missionaries go to China and then they figure out, oh my God, your language is not precise. It's not precise to the point where you're using this, ta, the generic ta to refer to women too. So you need to come up with a women version, a female version of the third person pronoun. And then they invented it as a reaction to the missionaries. And the missionaries, like basically introduce a gender binary into the language. And so
What?
like yeah, so it's whack actually. And there was a whole like feminist backlash against like, this other like the feminine third person pronoun. And
Yeah.
now I think the gender, I would say the trans and the non-binary community who use Chinese are trying to bring back the original, the neutral.
Yeah, for sure. I think they should.
Yeah, which, I'm using that. And so, I think language and culture are evolving. And I don't know, I just always feel like, depending on which traditions and cultures I'm talking about, I'm always like right in the middle. And I have to like pull what seems to make sense for me.
Yeah. Well, you're helping me out. Thank you. You're helping me rediscover myself. So then I get a lot of different people defining the non-binary. How can we explain what non-binary is to a person that's never heard that word before?
Well, it's challenging. Honestly, I don't really love non-binary. I mean, I think, it's a negation, right? Like non-binary is sort of not this, not that, right?
Let's say you meet a person that's in their 80s and they're asking you that question. What does non-binary mean?
I straight up tell them I don't identify as a man, I don't identify as a woman, I'm just who I am. And I'm right down the middle. I kind of use that language of down the middle. And, that's just who I am. That's comfortably how I see myself, and I want
Mhm.
others to see me this way.
I think a lot of the confusion comes when people start identifying with who you're having sex with rather than how you represent yourself.
Oh, I definitely think so. I mean,
Yeah, I
that's,
think there's a lot of
yeah.
confusion with that.
I know. It's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
Yeah, because I feel like that's a whole different dimension of identity, right? I mean, that
Yes,
actually may or may not have anything to do with how you want people to see you as a person, just as an individual.
exactly. Yeah, totally. So when did you come out as they, them?
Yeah, so I forgot to do homework. I was gonna look up to see when I like came out, because nowadays it's sort of hard. There's different layers of social spheres. There's the internet, there's the to the in person to family, right? Like, and even that process is sort of like ongoing. So I think for me,
Mhm.
the process began about 4 years ago, 4 years ago. And it was, a lot of kind of this back and forth I was saying about like looking for the right word. Because I know how the feeling is. Like it's really familiar to me to know, okay, like I don't want this, I don't want that. Like I want something that actually isn't here yet. I'm just like waiting, for something to emerge.
Mhm.
I always
Or it
felt
merged 2, 3,000 years ago, except we need to re-dig it out.
that's right. Yeah, exactly. I was just born in the wrong era. I always
Yeah.
feel that way. And like I should have been born way back or in the future sometime.
Yeah, I mean, even in Egyptian days, I mean, there were like men with these big, beautiful things and putting eyeliner on, and there were no issues, you know.
No, I know. So yeah, so I was fishing for the word, and I think, and that was a time in which like I think the LGBTQIA plus community started to be like, to be more um, explicit in making space for people who don't identify as men or identify as female. And then they kind of like, created this language, and honestly, non-binary is an umbrella term, right? So I think, okay, fine, this is an umbrella that I can be part of. I do feel that way. With all,
So then, how do we explain what pansexual is and binary, and how do they relate, and how are they different?
I think that's entirely different. I mean, I think, pansexuality to me means that it refers to being attracted to lots of different kinds of people. I think that there are non-binary people who are attracted to very specific kinds of people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who identifies as a non-binary lesbian. They're, attracted to women. And, pansexuality, I think,
Wait,
refers.
hold up. I got confused. Non-binary lesbian is
Yeah,
a non-binary lesbian is a lesbian that is attracted to only women.
women, femmes and women. Yeah.
Only feminine women that would be considered non-binary
I think
lesbian.
so. Yeah, uh-huh. And then
Okay.
they themselves feel like they're non-binary.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So, I mean, I'm not an expert on this stuff, like I feel like what you're doing is great because it sort of helps people to break down like these notions of what one thing is supposed to be, which in fact
yeah,
there's really like I don't know, just so many relationships and so many past experiences that could like offer different nuances to it. Like for me, like
yeah.
some of what I brought, I think, is sort of my Chinese and Taiwanese upbringing and having had that set of experiences and then living in Virginia, like that, whole
Wow.
constellation of how these different gender meanings like get bounced around and then like create these new things for me. So, oh, it's very, very complicated, I think.
Yeah, it is complicated. I'm just it starts making me rethink how I'm supposed to identify myself or I mean, cuz see like as far as for me, I've been single for 7 years and I haven't even been dating anybody, but since I started my transition, but before my transition, I dated both men and women. It's if I had the opportunity now, I'd probably do the same thing, still continue to date men and women. But I don't know. I don't specifically have a preference of who's which one in a hierarchy. How do you say the word hierarchy? As far as my own
Yeah.
personal, yeah, which one is better than the other? Or which one do I crave more? Or which one? I mean, to me, everybody's equal. Humans are equal to me. So I guess that would be like pan non-binary trans experience, something like that. Like, wow.
Yeah.
That's real. That's there's so many layers added onto that. I like Zhongxing a lot better.
I mean, I don't know. People in Taiwan actually use Zhongxing and equate it to transgender or non-binary, but I do, and it makes sense to me.
Well, it's making sense to me too. So then how did you come out when did you finally like how did you finally like expose yourself and who did you expose yourself to?
Well, it's funny, 4 or 5 years ago, right? And I'm 42 now, so I was like 37. And coming out later in life is different, I think. It's just
I agree. Yeah, I was 34 and I'm about to be 42 actually, so we're about the same age.
it's
I
different,
totally
right?
get you.
It's
It's
totally
hard.
different. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, like your life is entangled in different ways, and there's kind of the government layer, right? Like, how do you wrestle with that? Like, what's the
Yeah,
ID situation? What's the bathroom situation? Like, is it time? You have to pick your battle, right? Like,
right.
okay, like which one do you make a change to? Which people or authorities do you talk to first? And that for me, I talked to my partner, and he's very supportive,
Uh-huh.
and actually has been creating the space for me to really explore this space, like
That's
this kind of
amazing.
like the terminology that we use, and like he's up on like all the latest and like reads Reddit and like talks about like how people talk about it. So I'm not like in a vacuum. Like I'm sort of
Yeah.
like using language that other people are using too. And then from there on, and with the support, I've been able to come out to my family. Came out to my brother. My brother, hilariously, when I told him, he like paused for about 30 seconds. It's like, oh my god, that makes sense. It just like all like sort of like came down. And it sort of like all opened up for him. Like he sort
Is
of
your brother younger or older than you?
he's younger. Yeah, he's 3 years younger than me. So like I think he always saw me as somebody maybe like was different and was maybe struggling to be someone that the society doesn't have a name for. So I think he was like, "Oh my God, that all makes sense." So like that was really affirming, and I think with his help, I've been able to come out to my parents. And hilariously, when I came out to my parents, we were like having burritos and tacos, and my dad doesn't live here; he lives in Taipei, and my mom at the time was living in Virginia. So like they were visiting. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna drop this bomb." And then I was about to send them to off at a train station, to take the Amtrak to go to Orange County, and then I was like, hey, I I am non-binary and I'm 中性, I mean, you probably know this by now. And they're like quiet. My dad's like nodding the whole time. And I was like, yeah, I use they, them, theirs pronouns. And my dad's like, huh? Is that okay? Like, grammatically, I was like, oh yeah, yeah, it's becoming okay. It's in the Oxford English
Right.
dictionary. I was like, that is totally okay. I was like, oh, okay. Then that's cool. That's cool. He just wanted to make sure we're grammatical here.
Yeah. How
And
cute
then
is that?
it's
That's
so
cute.
cute. It's
It
so cute.
is.
I know. And then my mom subsequently has like, referred to me as her child. Like, I've just asked her again and again, and both my parents refer to me as their child. And that's really unusual in the Chinese language, because I think that the Chinese familial terms are very much gender, because the Chinese patriarchy system is still very strong. So, but anyway, so that was cool. And then the rest of it was like coming out to layers and layers of friends. You know how like a different tier, right? Like close friends, second,
Yeah.
and then, like, okay, my band are basically my chosen family. They kind of knew it already. And then like other folks, like extended family. And I think, along the way, you know how it is. Like you find different ways to educate people.
Yeah.
And some people have lots of questions. Some people will go and like do research on their own, and it's bumpy, right? Like not everyone's gonna get it, and lots of
Yeah.
mistakes, right? Like people tripping up, when they refer to me, using the they, them, theirs pronouns. Also, I had a name change, So on top of that, there was all this like language stuff, and then like perception stuff, and then
Yeah.
emotional. I mean, it's just, it's a whole thing. Yeah.
It really is. And I totally hear you as far as how difficult it is transitioning later. Like I often tell myself like, wow, it kind of sucks that I've missed out on being in my early, my early childhood or even in my teens, even in my 20s, even in my early 30s. Like I was living as somebody else trying to please society, and now I finally get to be me in my 40s. I mean, I'm glad it's better late. It's better now than ever, but
Mhm.
I was kind of like beating myself over the head for a bit because I'd go on Instagram a lot and see all these fortunate kids in their teens and 20s transitioning now. And then I hear them complain about, I got to inject every day. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like what I would do to go back 20, 30, 40 years and start, it's
Yep.
like, please, I feel like people need to hear these, need to hear you, need to hear me. They need to know that the struggle has been quote unquote real, and to
I
really
totally hear
appreciate
you.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, totally hear you. I
Totally
mean, I think,
appreciate it.
generationally, this is so much has changed, and I'm really grateful, right? Like, there's some transgender rights, and then, still have a lot more to fight for, but, it's in a conversation now, and, people understand, the terminology. Some people do. So, but yeah, I do wonder, like, what would it be like if I had born a little bit later? Like, if I were to be able to get on hormone blockers, like just
Yeah.
questions come on. What if, what if, what if, right? But I think all I can do is to just be who I am. I mean, like part of my identity is actually my age, right? Like this is where I am, like generationally in this journey with lots of other people together. Yeah, and then
Exactly.
you
Hey,
know
we're pioneers.
that's right.
We're Zhongxing pioneers. So, yeah. What about professionally? How did you come out professionally?
That
Because
is
I personally had a difficult time with that. Having the doctor title was not easy when I started my transition because I looked like a girl. I gotta say, probably the first 3 years. I'm in my seventh year now, and the first 3 years, even with facial hair, I still look pretty feminine. And it wasn't easy for me to have that doctor title because I felt like people looked at me and did not respect me, or they did not really believe me, or it was difficult coming out professionally, going through puberty, let's just say that, because I looked like a 17-year-old boy for a long time.
yeah.
So I mean, how has it been like for you?
It's tough. I mean, at the time, I was actually in a city job, and I
LA city or Virginia?
yeah, city of Los Angeles. So
Oh,
it's really kind of host of reasons. I ended up in a position there, and it's funny, like of all the places, of all the kind of institutions, government is probably the most restrictive, right? So I ended up in a position working at the city in the Department of Cultural Affairs, and
Oh man, that had to be difficult. And with
it was
public
hard.
bathrooms and everything, oh my
Exactly.
goodness.
Exactly. No, I mean, you're right on. Like the bathroom situation was really, really challenging. It got to the point where I basically left the job because I got sick, from like UTI, and I just didn't feel safe in the bathroom anymore. The name change took a bit of time, and it go through the city's like name change system. Like there's a whole hoops, like,
Yeah,
I
it's a
wanted.
pain in the butt going through it. It really
Oh my God,
is.
it was insane. And it was like, I asked them eventually, like, I was able to talk to the entire city's LGBTQ coordinator. And I was like, what does it take in order for you to add an X gender marker in the entire city? Because I know I'm not the only person here. I may be the first person asking about it. I know you're not gonna like just be done with me, like.
Sure.
So they were like, well, it turns out that, in order to add an extra option in this as a sex category into the city form, we need to actually hire back a web developer who knows this language that this form is built in, and nobody else know. Like it's some like archaic system, and it would require changing something like 68 other forms. So basically, it's their bureaucratic answer to say, well, we're working on it, but it's going to take a while. And the whole thing too was sort of like within my department, I have friends, and I think, I was able to kind of feel safe within the smaller group of people that I surrounded myself with, but I really didn't feel like I had the support from other folks, like the management, didn't understand me, and I would get misgendered all the time at meetings, and it was a terrible, terrible place to be coming out to. But in hindsight, I'd learned a lot. I was one of the first few people to change my name and gender marker at the same time in the LA County system. So when I went to court and did that whole thing, the paperwork, I was like 002. Like you could tell, like, when I was
That's
there.
so rad.
So I knew how to like navigate the system. I documented, at the time, my partner and I, and a really close friend of ours, the three of us did our gender marker and name change at the same time. We like helped each other, and we created this long Google Doc of how to navigate every step along the way in this paperwork. So now that document is getting shared around.
Wow, that's brilliant. That's so nice of you. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I said, I'm just embracing where I am in the process and in a journey with others.
And what about passport? Like I tried changing my passport years ago, and it was such a pain in the butt where I was like, I'll leave it alone whenever until I decide to travel out of the country. And like, have things gotten easier in the last 4 or 5 years with that?
I think it's still kind of challenging. You still need a doctor's note.
Hmm. That's crazy,
I
right?
know it's wild to indicate that you have completed your transition.
Yeah, I mean, do I look like a Carolina? I mean, come on, yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's how it is, though.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
and there's no X gender marker, no non-binary gender marker for the passport because that's a federal document. So most state documents there is an option for X, but outside of that, hard to know. But certainly not the federal level yet.
Well,
I think
hopefully
it's part of the
soon.
discussion, but yeah, it's still being worked on.
Hopefully soon.
I know.
Yeah, because I fear traveling, out of the country and stuff. I don't know. I do get these thoughts sometimes. I'm like, well, what if they're like, well, what's down there? You know what I mean? I'm like, whoa, like, I mean, who doesn't have these anxieties?
Of course, and who knows? Like, what if you have a medical emergency? You go to the hospital, and then like people look at your passport, they're like, "That's not the person that I'm." It's like, you
Yeah,
know, in all
right.
situations, right? I mean, you just have to think about the possibilities, and that having a piece of paper we take for granted actually is some of the basic ways to access like human rights and
Right.
yeah. So
There's still a lot of work, but I think it's going somewhere good right now, which is awesome. Finally.
I hope so.
So, I often get people email me and stuff. not sure whether or not they're ready to transition. They don't know how they identify. They really don't know where to get resources or how to get resources. What kind of advice can you give people who are questioning their identity, whether or not they're man or woman, or whether or not they're they, them? I mean, what kind of advice would you give somebody? Let's say you had like a kid brother or kid sister, and they're like 14 and they're like, you know what, I'm not sure. I kind of want to be masculine. I kind of want to be feminine, but people are making fun of me. I mean, what kind of advice would you give someone like that?
Um, yeah, no, that's a good one. I think surrounding yourself with people who see who you are is important, and that may
Mhm.
be a privilege to begin with, right? I mean, so there are certainly people who don't are not seen.
Yeah,
And I think, I think that that takes a little bit of vulnerability to start to share, to to talk to the friend that you think will accept you, that will understand and see you, and then to slowly build that out. I mean, it really is like this effort of building your own space, building a space of safety and comfort and belonging. And if you're not finding that, in your physical surrounding, and there may be places online, but I do think it's important to have the physical space to be safe as well. So
absolutely.
that's like the start, I think, but there's a lot more to it than that. And there are, lots of different organizations that are doing great work, and seek them out, and to be proactive. And I think, like, one of the places, there's obviously the LGBT center, in Los Angeles, but in lots of different cities in the US, there are kind of counterparts to that. But I think, I just want to give a shout out to where I work, actually. I work at One Archives Foundation, which is a nonprofit that does LGBTQ history programming.
What's it called again?
One Archives Foundation.
One Archives Foundation. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, tell us.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit, and we've been around since 1952, first as a magazine publisher, basically publishing a progressive gay and lesbian magazine as a way
That's
to create a
amazing.
community. And then I think, the founders thought that it was important to collect and, to sort of, you know, to basically literally like dumpster dive and collect items of deceased individuals, gay and lesbians, individuals whose families tossed out their stuff because they didn't really feel like they were part of the family. So, like, it's really like queer and trans people having to take the initiative to create their own history, to do so through, like, forming an archive and telling the story. So I think, stories are important. Um,
Absolutely.
you find stories, look for stories, and look for stories that resonate with you. Or, the reason I always feel like I should have been born in a different era is because I feel like I've heard lots and lots of stories of people who are like me. That makes me feel like I'm a part of a larger universe. That's important. That's a
Which we
feeling that
are.
I want.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
totally.
yeah, stories and histories from different places and different universes, different, I don't know, continuums of life. So,
Absolutely. Those have been some amazing words out of Umi Hsu. Thank you so much for tuning in from Alhambra, California. Hot, hot, hot day today. And I'm sitting here spending the temperature with you, which is amazing. Thanks so much for being on my show. Thanks for being open. I know it's not easy to be open and raw and just loving the way you're being. Thank you so much for your open arms. And I'd hope to invite you back on my show.
love it. It's been a pleasure, Lino. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Have a good day. Bye bye.
There. Bye bye.